Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dragon Talk. We have an amazing person that we are interviewing right now, Miss Deborah Ann Woll. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
We have a live audience today.
Yes, lots of clappings.
Live audience.
Wow. Very excited for D&D Live this year. And the fact that you are going to, in addition to being a performer on the main stage and many of the storylines, you're going to be dungeon mastering too.
Yay!
I'm so excited. Yeah, that was kind of something that just came up in the last week, and they asked if I could be ready, and I was like, okay.
Seriously? In the last week?
Yeah, just the last week they asked if we would want to do that. And it was like a soft hold until like today. So I better get working.
Yeah. It should be fun. So yeah, you put together everything for Relics and Rarities as like a whole show. What was that like?
And you're not even like just like I'm just gonna dungeon mash. Like you're like making like this crazy show with puzzles and riddles and like really like you're making it a little harder. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love it.
Props, all those things. Well, I mean, I love puzzles and riddles and things like that. So I do those all the time, every day anyways. So like, that's just like a regular day for Deb.
That's easy.
Easy.
That was easy. I had like a list of all of the puzzles long before I knew what the story was. Yeah, no, I mean, so it actually, we were just talking before we came on, it kind of started with D&D Live last year because Nathan Stewart asked me if I would run a one-shot last year's event, the Stream of Many Eyes.
Yes, and you're Briarcleft. Which is a Briarcleft?
Witch of Briarcleft.
Witch of Briarcleft.
Singular witch is very important.
That is important. Although, if you no spoilers, watch to the end. There may be more. But my wife, who's not a D&D fan really at all, doesn't really doesn't love the genre. She watched your performance and that whole dungeon mastering story, and that blew her mind. She was like, I didn't realize that this is what it could be. And so she got super excited and inspired by that. So.
Everybody has that one dungeon master that changes everything.
Yeah, it sort of suits your style or something, and it kind of shifts it for you. But that was a big part of it for me with Relics, is that I didn't start playing until an adult. I was an adult. And so my whole life I really wanted to, and it just felt like this club that I wasn't allowed to join. And so I think a big part of Relics for me was introducing it in a way that even if you have no idea what all that dice rolling is about, you can still enjoy the show. And maybe it gets you interested and then you want to learn how to play. And so the best like tweets and things that we get from the show are all people saying, hey, I had no idea what D&D was, and now I'm starting a campaign with my family, or I'm joined up with this thing, or and I'm just like, those are the best to hear that like this community is growing and getting more diverse and more voices are being added to these stories. It's just really cool.
Yeah, and I was just talking about that in another interview where I think that's a really important factor of the streaming kind of a phenomenon, is that people are exposed to so many different styles of Dungeons and Dragons, and so they find the one that they enjoy, and then if they go and try to play on their own, maybe that experience doesn't exactly match up with your expectations. And in the past, you just be like, oh, all D&D isn't for me because that one experience, you bounce off of that. But now you're like, oh, I have an ideal that you're shooting for.
Yeah. Well, and the idea that you can't play this game wrong. There is no way. And when it's a game, so it's fun, Yeah. Like that's the first rule. That I think is really easy to forget sometimes in a complex game sometimes. So I've really appreciated the idea of kind of like taking off the kind of sort of the kind of intimidating mystique that has sort of surrounded it before, and said like, hey, however you want to play this game is great. Just go and play it, because as an adult, it's so important to exercise our imaginations, because we lose that. As a kid, we do it naturally. We do it all the time. And we don't do it so much as an adult, unless you're like me and you're a weirdo and you play make-believe for a living. It's a good thing for all of us to do. So I'm glad more people are doing it.
You may have answered this with that, but there is something I think about your style to DMing that is very approachable to like people like Greg's wife, who don't have any D&D experience and have really not had expressed that much interest in playing D&D, but it's appealing to them. And when you're saying about the tweets that you get from people who are saying, I now am going to start a game with my family, which to me, like, that kind of all feels like the same type of person that you're really resonating with. What do you think it is about? I mean, how do you demystify this game? Like, what's the secret there? Like, how are you actually, like, because it is true. There are these people now that watch you DM that are like, I'm going to do this. Never done it before. I'm doing it.
Well, I think for one, a lot of the guests that we had on the show are totally new players. Their
That's good.
literal first time playing is on our show. Kevin Smith, even though he plays this game as well as any seasoned player, that is literally the first time he's ever played. And because he's such a busy person, with some of the other guests, I had like a sit down and said, like, here are the basic rules. And like, this is your basic go-to attack if you're ever stuck and you just need something to do, you know, and I kind of give him a sense. Kevin did not know how to play D&D, probably still does not know how to play. But he was brilliant. And it was just because he was so open to it. And the story was paramount and he was collaborative and he was just creative and went with it. And I like that when the emphasis is put on your creativity and your input as a player and a DM, and then I'm playing with you. I'm not playing against you. This isn't about the DM trying to like
That's
trick
important.
you. It's about making this a really expansive experience. That I think, I think that makes it less intimidating. You know, we get rules wrong all the time, and you're like, all right, who cares? You know,
Yeah,
as long as you're having fun.
As long as you're having fun, and it's just the rules are there to kind of, you know, guide, you know, sort of help the story keep moving. And if the story is moving, you don't really need them in that way, you know.
I love what you're saying about Kevin Smith, because I want, you know, as a fan of his, you know, from the 90s, what always inspired me about him was this like DIY kind of feel of storytelling where like, you know, there were all those legends of him like, you know, writing up his credit cards to fund Clerks, and he just made it with his friends, and, you know, it's always like, oh, well, maybe I can do that, you know, and jump into it. And I think that, you know, that mode of creating films probably worked really well for allowing him to jump into this creative setting and just be like, oh yeah, I know how to do this because this is how I've done my whole career.
Yeah, he was very, very open to it. No fear at all. Some of our other guests, you could see it took him like half an hour or so to kind of go, oh, I get it. I can do whatever I want, you know. But he like right from the start took charge. And the fun thing about it as well is that like he invented at one point, he was pretending to be he's trying to bluff someone, and he made up this idea that he worked at Tiefling Traders, which is not a part of Bellbrook, but now it is. Like Kevin Smith has now contributed that to the canon of my world. You know,
that's amazing.
I love that.
And I love that you said he didn't know how to play, which is actually kind of shocking to me. I can't believe he'd never played, but
not know how to play,
and that he might still not know how to play. But that doesn't matter because Kevin Smith had the same experience of playing D&D as anyone 100%. Who goes to play D&D that maybe knows all the rules and has been playing for years, and they had a good time. The same, you both played D&D. Like it just proves again, like you don't have to know anything.
Well, when I do newbies, in fact, when I play with new players, I generally don't do a lot of rules. I don't generally let them roll their own characters. Even I've designed like 20 to 30 first level characters, and I'm just like, hey, if you were attacked in Lord of the Rings, how would you want to handle it? You know, and if they're like, oh, I would try to heal the sick, I'm like, great, cleric, you know.
Oh, that's a good
talk my way
test.
out of it. Great, bard. You know, you just kind of like give them something that feels instinctual for them. And then I don't give them any rules. I just am kind of like, basically, you're going to explore. I'm going to tell you what you see, and you're going to tell me what you want to do, and you're going to roll D20s to figure out if you can do it. And we'll point to your sheet and we'll figure it out. You know, like it's not an intimidating math game where you have to, and people love that stuff. Like I've never played a game where you like religiously track your ammo and your rations and things like that, because that's not what interests me. I'm interested in collaborative problem solving. So that's the focus of my games. And I'm much more interested in what my players have to say than what their characters have to say. I want to know what their brains are capable of coming up with through the lens of character. So I don't do a lot of like the social world of like the outcast drow. Like, again, I'm just not that interested in it. I want to see what Xander and Julia and Jasmine and Tommy can come up with, and then use this like character sheet and these ideas to kind of elevate that. So again, I think that if you're not an actor or a voice performer or someone like that, that's much more accessible perhaps. to feel like I don't have to be good at voices or good at role playing. I just have to be a creative problem solver.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you mentioned that amazing cast, Xander, Julia, and Tommy. I think we're all at Stream of Many Eyes, and we're fantastic. Why don't you talk through for folks who may not have watched the show, what each of their characters are like, and what their players are like too.
Well, we'll go down the line. So we have Tommy Walker, who plays Viros. He is literally a prince. His character, he's a fighter character, pretty standard sort of martial fighter. But the greatest thing so Tommy is such a lovely, nerdy guy, but he looks kind of like a prince, so I think he can kind of relate to some of that stereotyping a bit. And the really fun thing that we do with Tommy is his charisma stat Viros's charisma stat is very, very low.
Oh.
Because he's a prince, he thinks everyone loves him. He thinks he's really handsome and really charming, but no one's ever been honest with him because every joke he made that was lame, everyone laughed because he was the prince. So it's really fun because Tommy leans into that, and he'll make charisma rolls all day long with his crap stats. And it just leads to the most amazing story. And in our finale, even as the fighter character, he almost has an entirely role play what is the word I want? Objective or strategy. It's almost an entirely role play strategy in our finale against the big bads. And I think that's really cool. That happened a bunch where different characters kind of ended up taking on a role that wasn't in their wheelhouse, but it made them be creative about it, which is cool. So cool. So then we have Jasmine Bueller. You may know her. She streams on Twitch, and she's awesome. She plays Beryl the Barbarian, and she's an ancestral barbarian, which is fun because I don't think there's, at least to my experience, we don't have a lot of streaming ancestral barbarians, and so it was kind of cool to sort of introduce some of those aspects to the universe, I guess.
What are those aspects, in case somebody listening didn't know?
I mean, I don't. Well, one is, so they have this guardian, kind of spirit guardian that can come on and help. And then some of the raging is a little different. I don't know. I mean, there are protective elements that come with it as well. I think they can help protect their allies using their guardian. So it's an interesting kind of mix. And to go with that, what I was really impressed with Jasmine is that rage is an interesting tool. So again, you can play this game as a strategist and you could just rage every time because it gives you bonuses. Or you could play like Jasmine and say, I'm only going to rage when Beryl would get mad. And there were moments where it might really have helped her. They were fighting a shark at one point and she never raged because she said, it's an animal, like we have to fight it so we don't die, but I'm not angry at it. And again, like that's such an impressive,
that's interesting,
isn't it?
Yeah.
So really impressive, like use of the specifics of the story. And I, that again is such to like impose that disadvantage on yourself in order to keep it true. Then we have Julia Dennis, who plays Annabella the Bard. And she's perfect for that because Julia is like trash talker extraordinaire. And the main amazing thing about Julia is also one of those players who, Tommy and Julia are newer to the game, like the last 3 years or so, 3 or 4 years. And Julia still, like, before she looks at her sheet, she goes, oh, I have an idea. And it's usually a crazy idea. And she'll go, okay, I'm going to use this makeup and I'm going to dress myself up to look like this guy. And we'll go, actually, you have a spell for that. And she'll go, oh, great. I used my spell.
So much easier.
Perfect way, again, for new players to say, like, just have the idea and the sheets will support you rather than feeling like you have to play off the sheet.
And the other people around you can do the same.
Exactly. And so she has some of the wildest ideas. She's one of the bravest players. She just walks in and lies. And it's just amazing. Some of her roles are, some of them really support her. But the great thing is, even when she rolls poorly, she just digs in harder, which allows her to do it again because she's changed her tactic, and it's a really, really inspiring way to play. And finally, we have Xander Jeanmarais, who plays Ricky the Huckster. He's a gnome druid. And Ricky did this really beautiful homebrew skin on him, which is an alchemist. So he asked me beforehand and we talked it out. But his idea is that instead of using spell slots, he has little bottles of potions that he has that do his effects. So for something like Fairy Fire, he would hurl this potion, and when it breaks, it would cover everything in that area in Fairy Fire, and that would cost a spell slot kind of idea. And it's just a beautiful way to do it. And it meant every time on his turn, we were all like, oh, what's he going to say now? Like, what does the bottle look like? And how does it work? And it just gave this really beautiful, creative sort of spin to it.
What a cool idea.
Yeah.
I love that you're just like, okay, let's figure out a way to make this work.
Well, and more than that, I told him, I said, if you want to do that, such a great idea. But I was like, I feel like Ricky would jingle. Like, I feel like if you have that many bottles on you, you'd make some noise. Like, great. And we gave him disadvantage on stealth. So it's like, again, like intentionally putting on these disadvantages to yourself to give you something to play with and to sort of force you to be more creative and not just do the spell, but how do you counteract your downsides.
That's so cool.
I love that. I like taking there's D&D doesn't, I don't always have to have a benefit. Mm-hmm. I think it's cool when like, oh, I screwed something up, and now like playing with Satine at GaryCon, her thing is like, if you miss on an attack, then you have to roll damage on yourself. Like, with the assumption of like you tripped when you were trying to cast that, and now you fell on your face. But I was like, you know what? I hate it, but I love it, because that's probably what really happened. And I don't know why I keep trying to like make like my fantasy real, but right. I love that. I love when you add like a real element to like, I probably would make a lot of noise because I'm carrying all these potions around with me.
I'm carrying these bottles,
Yeah, and like rolling a 1 is not a failure. It's actually this storytelling amazing moment where you can be like,
things. It's just
100%. It's just this great new thing. And so, I mean, the best moments in all games are always those failures, because then you have to dig yourself out of it, and people get creative.
Yep. I love Xander as well. He's going to be performing at D&D Live with Bonnie Gordon as the Library Bards, which is going to be so fun. And I don't know if you saw this, but a couple months ago, we did something with him with his mother. He went back to the Midwest and played with his parent, his mom and her friends. I just brought so many tears to my eyes every single time.
Yeah. With their Wisconsin accent.
It was so great.
Wisconsin.
Yep.
I know. I'm almost kicking myself that we didn't invite them to D&D Live, but next time.
Oh my God.
That's going to be great. And then hopefully we'll be able to add another special guest to the cast. I'm really excited about who that might be. We've got, the table's got 6 player slots, so we could even have 2 additional.
We could even have 2 if we wanted to. Maybe. So we'll see. Maybe we'll invite some people back. Maybe we'll get some new people. We're not sure.
Yeah.
I have to sort of figure out where I'm going to set it and what their quest will be.
So maybe, and we definitely talked about those characters, but I'm not sure, everyone knows exactly what the conceit of the show was and all that stuff. So, walk us through.
So, I mean, it all sort of started with, someone from Geek and Sundry saw me at the Stream of Many Eyes. And when they were looking to put together a new D&D show, someone recommended me. And they came out to me, and the sort of pitch that they had was, we want to do 6 episodes that have an overarching story, but we would also like them to work standalone. And we'd like you to bring in a new guest every time, potentially a celebrity, somebody that we recognize. And I was like, wow, that's a tall order. Like, how do you wrap up an episode and still feel like it's progressing?
Right. It's like the X-Files problem.
Yes, a little bit. So my thought was, this has been done before, was like Horcruxes, or in Zelda, you need the compass, the map, and the key, or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
And the idea being that there would be 5 items, information, whatever it is, that you have to go on 5 quests to get everything you need in order to find and finish off the big baddies at the end. And so what that allowed us to do was kind of keep building story whilst give each of the episodes kind of an enjoyable arc on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And it made sense for a guest star to come in, do a quest, and then leave. Suddenly we weren't in the middle of the forest and that person disappeared and we have a new person and we're just going to continue walking. So it gave it kind of a logical idea, which then gave me the idea of a home base. So I wanted it to be a questing company that was going to send people off. And I said, well, if you were a really good questing adventuring company, you wouldn't announce that to the world. You would be very secretive about it. So I got the idea that it would take place out of a curio shop. because it would be the perfect place to hide very valuable items in plain sight. That something that looked like some sort of junky old item to the, someone who didn't know could actually have incredible magical properties. So yeah, it became Relics and Rarities, and this was the home base for the R&R Brigade, which goes out and takes care of the world while everyone else sleeps soundly in their beds. And I went to them and, at Geek and Sundry, and I was like, I kind of feel like it should look like your grandmother's attic, and also like, are you afraid of the dark, and Goosebumps, and kind of pull in those kind of childlike, creepy vibes, and gave them some reference photos of things I was thinking of, and they went away. And when I came back, it was like someone had pasted my imagination up in a studio. Incredible. I was so floored. Wow. And I've never had that before. I've always been a brick in the wall. I've never helped build the wall. It was a really...
Oh, you mean as being an actor and going onto the set and you're like, I can change my little parts, but not the entire vision.
Yeah. I can be as strong a brick as I possibly can be, but it's still going to be the wall. It's somebody else's wall. And this was the first time that was really like, here are my blueprints. This is the wall I want to build. And, please go and make as colorful and incredible bricks as you can and put them all together. And it was great to come back and see, what your blueprints then become in someone else's head,
That's so great.
Always more than, just exciting.
That's so cool. It actually, it reminds me, the setting is exactly what I picture Beadle and Grimm's Pandemonium Warehouse to look like.
Yeah. Like a magic item shop or.
That's all
Yeah. Well, then very fitting we had Lillard for our first episode. He was our guest.
Yeah. So the players, now, did they have experience playing together before this, or how did you bring them all together?
So Julia and Tommy, they play with me in my homebrew game.
Okay.
So I introduced them to the game. I am pretty sure I'm the only person they've ever played D&D with.
They're very lucky.
I love them so much. They're really good people, great players, so creative and committed, good actors as well, which can help sometimes, especially if you're doing RPG entertainment, which is a little different than just playing at home.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so when when Geek and Sundry asked if we would do this, I said, well, can I bring 2 of my friends? And they said, sure, can we bring 2 of our friends? And we all got together. And so Xander and Jasmine were people that Geek and Sundry recommended that they'd worked with before. I guess Xander is basically the king of Geek and Sundry. And they were absolutely the most perfect fit. We had one prequel game. I wrote a really quick, again, 90-minute one-shot for them to play beforehand. And at the reward of that quest were their magic items, because they are starting at 5th level, and I felt like you should have a magic item. So I had them go on this sort of mini quest together to find their magic items. And it was like lightning in a bottle the first time. I was really shocked, having had never played together, with Jasmine and Xander included. Everyone gelled immediately. Friendships were forged right away. And I think at the end of that session, we were going in that was Friday night. We were going to start shooting Monday morning. And I think that whole weekend we were all just holding our breath a little bit. Can we just contain this magic that happened and make sure that it continues, because it's so exciting. And it was fun too. I'm a very physical dungeon master. I like to stand up and move and crouch and do all my things. And they had put me in a chair with arms. And after watching that little prequel one shot, they were like, we're going to move that around because you're going to knock the chair over.
You need a little wheelie stool, I
need all kinds
dental
of
hygienist.
That's so funny because I think those hand motions that you just did are. I think there's an image of you playing up in the conference room during the Stream of Many Eyes, and you're making those exact same gestures.
I'm very physical with that. When I found a photograph, it's on Twitter somewhere if people want to find it. I found a photograph of myself turning 5.
Oh wow!
And I'm at preschool, and it's my birthday, and we used to do this thing where you would walk around, you'd carry a globe, and then walk around a light, for each year of your birth kind of thing. Sort of thing. It was a very nice thing. There's a picture of me in that room, and I'm going like this with my hand. And I found that photo and I was like, oh my God, that's Twiggy. It's this character that I created, and I played it on Critical Role, and I was playing Twiggy in that photo up there. And I was like, that's it. Twiggy just has to be me at 5.
Yep.
And I think part of why I love D&D so much is, like all of us, when you get to like middle school, when you become self-aware and self-conscious, you start to hide parts of who you are.
Mm.
And I think particularly as an actor, so much of my journey has been about taking those covers off and trying to get back to who I was at 12, 11, 10, 5. So I think D&D is such a perfect vehicle for that. It immediately asks you to be a kid again, at least the way I like to play. And so I found that photo and I was like, this is perfect and fitting. And I just want to play Twiggy forever so that I can, keep that little girl alive and happy.
That's fascinating. My daughters are 8 now, 8 and 5, and I played D&D with them a couple of times, and I've experienced something similar to what you're talking about, where they don't really have any preconceived notions. They don't really know what it is. But as dungeon mastering with them, it can just be like, well, it sounds like this is what you want to do. They have all the ideas. They have the childlike play instincts within them, and they just want to do it. And I just kind of steer it the way it happens. In describing what a dungeon master does, my 5-year-old was like, well, I want to do that. I don't want to just be the player. I want to do what you're doing. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, really?
So I kind of like reverse dungeon mastered with him. Like I was a player with her, and she was coming up with stuff that was just so fascinating and crazy and amazing. And I was the one who's like, all right, sounds like you're asking me for a perception check. So we'll do that, and then it got high, so I can see a lot more. What do I see? And then she would just describe what it was, and I was like, oh my God, I want to.
That's so interesting.
I want to hold on to this forever. I don't want them to get to middle school and have that like hide part of their lives.
You're already giving them the tools for them to not have to hide that. To always have that outlet for it.
Yeah, I'm hoping with all the gaming accoutrements I have in the house that it just is part of their DNA.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful, though. I love that story. I played one of my producers on one of the shows, used to play D&D when he was younger, and his son was having some trouble in school. I think he was 9. And he asked if I would come and run a game for like a few of his friends and their dads. So it was like a 8-person game or something like that. Wow. But I ran the very first adventure of Lost Mines, and those kids, oh my God. I mean, one, they had a blast. And then later that night, the father, who I knew, started sending me photos. His son had already sat down and was starting to draw out dungeons.
Oh, I love it.
And here's a monster, and he only lets you pass if you're very polite. Like he'd already like created a monster.
That's so great.
Like a role-playing monster.
You inspired another future dungeon master.
There you go, like at 9. And, but that's the thing. I mean, the best things are the ones that are inspirational, aspirational, rather than kind of like closed off. Yeah. If you're not perfect, you don't get to do this.
Yeah.
Just kind of opening that up.
And I like that more adults are just latching on to this type of play. I think it's something that you mentioned a couple of times of like, the people that feel the most healthy in their outlook on life are the ones that are like, hey, I'm just having fun. Like I'm doing the thing that I enjoy doing, and it doesn't necessarily add to the bottom line and get you like, able to get your mortgage paid and all that crap, but like you're just enjoying yourself. And, I'm hoping that, this surge in popularity that Dungeons & Dragons is having now just has this overarching good effect on the world.
In positive mental health.
Yeah, exactly.
D&D is basically free. I mean, once you kind of, figure out how to play, whatever sort of that costs at the base level, and you could get someone to teach you for free, you really don't need anything. I mean, most of my games are theater of the mind. That was a big reason why on Relics I didn't want like minis and set pieces. I was like, I just want a grid. I want to go old school grid, and I want to just draw it out like it's on a piece of paper. And maybe we find a few little things that give it some atmosphere. But if it looks like a battle is better in their minds, let's play it in their minds. Like I don't want to be tied to anything. Mm-hmm. And I want them to feel like they're in the room, not looking at the room, which I think is an important distinction. And I think it's a really good one to get into, because even if you have nothing but a pencil and a piece of paper, you can play this at a really basic level.
That's what I think is also confusing to people is when you tell them, like, because my parents still to this day are like, but where's the board?
How do you win?
Where are the people? Yeah,
Did you win?
When is it over? And
Right.
it's like, it's hard for people to understand that it is a game. There are no real winners and losers. It doesn't really end unless you want it to end, and you need nothing. Like, it's in your imagination. But again, thanks to streaming, people can actually see how the game is played. Thank God, because I am so sick of explaining.
Thank Peller.
Thank Peller and Pelham. I can just tell my dad, just watch this.
He's watching right now. I'm
He's
sure.
watching. He's on a train right now. Probably not. Not great Wi-Fi. But
I mean, I love the idea of being in that room for relics and rarities where you had all these props and things as well. Like I mean, I totally get what you're saying about theater of the mind being one of the strongest elements of Dungeons & Dragons, but there's also something really, and this was born true in the Stream of Many Eyes, where it's like, yes, we're all imagining this, but how cool is it if you could actually hold the Stone of Galore and like actually feel like, okay, this is the weight of it and this is what it is, and then
those are all, I think as long as you don't lose the kind of imaginative spark that kind of is underneath that, as long as what you bring out evokes rather than like defines, I think then, again, you're doing it right. There's no way to do this wrong. And we talked a lot about that, because Geek and Sundry were sort of like, hey, we have this ability to do a lot of technical stuff and build sets and props and things. And since I am much more of a theater of the mind kind of DM, I'm not I said this online, GAC, I guess that means cocaine or something like that, but
that's the secret.
GAC for me has always meant gear, like we have like camping GAC or things like that. But anyway.
Oh, okay.
The cocaine you take when camping. Right.
Me and Shelly are gacked up right now with all these props that we have right here.
But I wrote that on Twitter, and of course I was like, oh my God, wait a minute. I didn't mean that.
Let us tell you about pegging.
Yeah, we know. We've had a similar experience.
We were talking.
Yeah.
Your jeans.
I don't tend to use a lot of stuff. If I do have props, I've printed it off on my own computer or whatever it is, but they really wanted to do this. So I said, okay, great, but let's make it like imagination is the forefront of this whole thing. So what I want it to look like is kids in their parents' basement playing Dungeons and Dragons. And then when the DM says you're in a forest and you see all of the trees around you, I want it to look like just a little bit of what we'd imagine. So you still see your parents' basement, but there's also a tree, And so that's how we got this idea of like the single set that would remain the same, but we just dress it a little bit each time.
That's really cool.
And it gives you a little feeling, a little quality of where they are without telling you what it's supposed to look like.
I love that too.
And really similarly with the props, I mean, they had such an incredible crew there, because I was like, look, I can print off what I have. Like, that's how I would run this at home. And they said, oh, no. Because Brad can do calligraphy and all this stuff.
Wow.
So they made all these incredible props that I could literally hand out to them a letter. And I think the good thing is that all of those props, they're all clues. They're just little things that if I were at home, I would hand them the piece of paper or they'd write it down. And so this way it's immersive, but it doesn't, again, take away from the fact that it's all about what they see and what they do with that information.
Yeah. I mean, Shelly and I are both, former theater people. And so what you're describing basically feels like theater to me. It feels like, oh, you're like, you can, anytime you're on a stage, you can just tell the audience, hey, I'm a king. And then I am a king. Yeah. And then everyone has to believe that, right? And there's very much that power as the dungeon master to just say, this is what the reality is right now. And everyone accepts it at the table. And it feels very, evocative, but it's even more so if you got a sound effect or you've got a lighting cue and then you're like, oh, they're not just in control of what I'm imagining. They're in control of what I'm seeing and hearing and all my senses as well.
But I also think some of the most powerful theater experiences I've had have been like intimate arena seating, bare bones set, just like a couple of actors and like very, very little, like the lighting may change here and there. There may be like a single chair or something as the prop. And you're like, whoa, this is theater. I'm like, I got to do all the work here. But you're like, instantly you're
Yeah.
forced to. You're immersed in it because you have to just focus on what's happening on the stage, and you're not distracted by like the flashy sets and the stage is rising and
And all the puppets and the animals on stage. Yeah.
Right.
But that's interesting. Like you could think of something like Lion King, which is clearly a huge hit and everybody loves it. But what they talk about are the puppets and the technicals and things like that. And so you kind of decide, where do you want people's focus to go? And I think with a game like Dungeons and Dragons, you really want it. I wanted the focus to be on the players and specifically on their brilliance, how funny they are, how creative they are, how intelligent they are. That's the most important thing to me, is that even more than the characters, I want those players to shine. And it's really exciting for me that Tommy and Julia are now bona fide Dungeons and Dragons celebrities. I think that is so cool.
That is cool.
And so well deserved. And I don't know, that tickles me so much.
Do any of them want to jump into dungeon mastering now? Are they inspired by you? Are they going to be players forever, or do they want to?
I asked them that question, and both of them said no right now. I think it maybe is a little intimidating still at the moment, but I'm a really good D&D pusher. That's like I've elected myself to be the person on the corner that's like, hey,
first one.
You want to buy some D&D?
You want some D&D gack?
You can get hooked on my gack.
Now, is it Tommy and Julia that you introduced to D&D?
Yes.
So
Yes.
what was that? What did they had they expressed interest? Were they like, oh, so I've seen you doing this D&D
Nope.
thing? You just dropped that D&D nugget on them?
So Tommy had been in Daredevil the first season, and so I'd met him through that. And then they had moved out here from New York, so we were people they knew, and we became friends. And we were just having like a barbecue one day, and because I love Dungeons and Dragons and I want to play it as often as possible, I always just talk about it and try to, again, because people don't even know what it is. So I kind of just want to be like, oh no, it's not what you think it is. It's not that. It's this like really free, open, expressive game. And we were just talking, and they were like, oh, that sounds interesting. And I was like, hey, well, if you want to try it sometime, we can get a group together. And like, lo and behold, we're still sort of playing that game 3 years later.
Oh my God. And they had never played before.
Never before.
And now they're celebrities.
Now they're celebrities.
D&D celebrities.
D&D celebrities.
That is very interesting. I love that. So is your preference to play with new players, or do you not have a preference?
I do love playing with new players. I do think there's something unpredictable about it. And because they're more likely to just give you their ideas rather than play off of the paper, you're a little more alive and engaged with each other, eyes, looking at each other in the eyes. With more experienced players, you get some good ideas and some great strategy, but I do find it gets a little bit contained by what they can do rather than by what they can do,
Yeah.
Whatever
I thought that was the same word, but it was definitely very different expressions. Yeah.
I'm an actor. So I have a game. I'm running Storm King's Thunder for a group of pretty experienced players right now. And one of them, actually, Alan, was my first DM. He taught me how to play. And he actually helped on the show. I designed all of the guest characters, but he actually built them for me.
Cool.
Because we talked about it, and he was right. It's more fun to play against characters that you didn't specifically build. So I saw their sheets. I knew what they could do, but it wasn't like I had made it. So I was a little bit more surprised and inspired by what they came up with, because I didn't know their characters, like the back of my hand. So he built all of their characters and Alan Mills deserves a special thanks.
Yay,
He does.
Alan.
Yeah, 'cause he introduced you to D&D.
And he introduced me to D&D and got me hooked. And now I'm DMing for him on Storm King. And so Alan is a brilliant player. I mean, he's been playing 30 years more, something like that. And some of the things that he comes up with, I'm like, oh, that's because, you've fought something like this before and died or whatever happened. And so you're trying something new, but that's, I think, another level where you go, I have all this experience. Now I just want to experiment. and I want to see, like, is there another way to beat this bullet, or whatever it is? Can I do it a different way? And I really enjoy his experimental spirit.
How many games are you running right now?
The Storm King right now is the only one that's regular. I'm taking a little bit of a break from D&D at the moment because I'm in a transitional period in my work. So I'm focusing a little bit there and try and see if I can continue to do my job. So I haven't been doing very much D&D. I've been writing a lot of D&D. I have a new homebrew skin that I'm working on. And then I'm DMing for this Storm King pretty regularly. But like Tommy and Julia's game, we haven't picked up in a while. And then I do newbie games from time to time. So I have like 3 or 4 first level one-shots that if I ever run into people who just want to try it, we go ahead and we play those. And
oh my God, that's amazing.
I have a couple of those. I don't get to play very much though. So I'm excited for D&D Live.
Nice.
Just like play for 6 hours.
Yeah.
And I know we're figuring out exactly what character you're going to play, but there's a lot of options there.
Do you have a preference? What do you like to play?
I don't have a ton of experience playing just like straight spellcasters. So maybe that would be a good thing to try out. I don't know. I tend to gravitate more towards fighters or a mix of the two. But I mean, I love Twiggy. I don't know if they would maybe they'll let me bring Twiggy. I'm not sure. I keep wanting to play her, and I don't get to do it a ton. So maybe I would do that. But basically, I want to find out who the other people are playing, so we don't end up with a lot of overlap. Because maybe it'd be fun to try something new.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
You mentioned Daredevil and Charlie Cox was also a guest on Relics and Rarity. Was it? I think there were some stories back when you guys were filming that you had introduced him to the game on set. Is that true?
Yes and no. So, days on set can be very long, and there can be these long breaks between setups and things like that. So I used to bring the player's handbook and just like build characters for fun between takes or between setups.
Like cool people do.
Yeah.
Like cool people do. Oh well, even worse. When I was on True Blood, I used to bring adventures to set, and I would play with myself in my trailer alone.
I love that.
And little did you know that Joe was a few trailers down.
He was playing alone in his trailer.
I know. We didn't cross paths very much on set. Like we were in really different storylines. So
that's true.
Played. But yes, so I think he was just curious one day and came over, and we were sort of building a character for him together. But we never finished, and that was kind of as far as that ever went. And then when we were doing press for season 3 of Daredevil, I mentioned that I got this gig and that we were going to be shooting it and that we would bring in celebrity guests, never thinking in a million years that he would want to do it. In fact, I thought I kind of annoyed the crap out of him talking about it all the time. But that's my insecure nerd talking. I'm sure it was funny. And he ended up saying, "Hey, could I be one of those celebrity people who comes on?" And I was like, "Yes." And we worked it out. He came on.
I feel like that's the exact same reaction that I would have to.
Yeah.
That was basically when Geek and Sundry was pitching doing Rex and Rarity for this show. That's basically what I did. All right. All right. Let's do it.
Was that his first time playing D&D?
Yep.
What is up with these people that are like, I'll play D&D for the first time live or let you record it?
It's because of me and you, Shelley.
I'm so scared.
Yeah, he was great. I mean, he likes games. I don't think I knew that very, very much when we were shooting, but I found that out through this process. So that was something. We talked about it beforehand, so he had a little bit of a sense, and his character had a fairly complex mechanic with both sneak attack and booming blades. He had like ongoing stuff that which was confusing. So we did like specifically map out his kind of main attack. But yeah, I mean, he was great. He did an accent. And I think at a certain point, he was one of the ones that I think it took a little time to like warm up. But there's a moment where you see him go, "Oh, wait, I could use my mage hand and take that thing over there and we would be safe." And it was like, "Oh, I got an idea." And then for like the rest of the game, you could just see his eyes were like locked in.
Yep.
And I think for new players to see someone a little a little hesitant or unsteady, and then see them like take that leap. I'm so glad that we saw so many different players engage with it in their own unique way.
And I'm sure that's true for a lot of actors who, you know, similar to you, where you're like, I've been a brick in the wall, but haven't been able to actually contribute to storytelling. It's a little bit. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure even coming onto set felt similar to going on to the set for a TV show that he isn't writing, you know. But then if that moment is like, wait, I can write this. I can have my idea, and it happens.
Yeah, it's in the show.
And you're right. It's canon. It just occurred, and I bet that is that spark for people who, you know, who may be creative and may have that storytelling, you know, aspect in their careers, but don't have that necessarily, you know, that power.
Yeah. Well, Charlie, I've always said he's a great actor, but he also has a great director's sensibility, I think. Like, I absolutely see that in his future for him at some point. And I think it's because he has that urge to be a part of the storytelling, to make decisions that affect where and how this is told. And I think once that sinks in with D&D and you go, oh, wow, yeah, like I have complete control in this moment to affect this story. It's a lot of like, it's really great innocent power, you know, and benevolent power.
It sounds like, you know, you've gotten that to exercise that directing power a little bit with creating this show and having it be the wall that you're building with the collaborators at Geek and Sundry. Is that something that you'd want to pursue, the directing thing?
No, not at this point in time. Mostly because I just don't care enough about that. I love specifics. Like, my bread and butter, the thing that gets me so excited is that tiny little thing you say that then I go, oh, I can make a whole story about that the audience will never know. And it's just my story that like informs that one word that I say. And that's really exciting for me. I don't really care about, like, I don't know what color anything is or what shot it is. Like, my approach to acting has always been like, I'm in a documentary and you guys will capture it. And yeah, I'll sit 2 inches to the right to help with the shot, or I'll, you know, whatever I have to do to help with the shot. But like, I don't ask what size anything is, or, you know, it just doesn't interest me. I don't really care.
What, I mean, storytelling is storytelling, though. I mean, maybe it's just you need to have the right script, or you read a script that you're like, oh, now I want to tell the story the way I envision it to be. Okay. It seems very similar to dungeon mastering, but maybe that's just the improv nature is more what you love.
Maybe, I think so. I like that. But then again, you know, even through Relics, there were moments where, you know, I was drawing upon my old Aristotelian arc, you know, the thing we all learn about. And so like, there's one episode, Kevin's episode, where I wanted to introduce them to one of the really terrible bad guys. And they had a fairly easy go of it, especially because one of the other bad guys, they'd kind of skirted her. They'd found a way to kind of bluff their way around, and they never fought her. So I had placed, I don't know if this is spoiling too much, but I had placed zombies all like littering the hallway outside of the lair where I knew she was going to show up. And I made them minions, 4E minions, which basically means one hit, they're down, they're gone.
Yeah.
And the idea was to give them a false sense of security, because they knew the form of this. They knew we were nearing the end of our 2.5 hours and that this was going to be their fight. They hadn't fought yet. So there's Tommy using all his superiority die on minions. There's Kevin using fireballs to kill 1 HP minions, and they're loving it. They think they're like the hot shit, like loving it. And then other people are working on the code, and it's really hard to get in this room. They're like, this is it. Like, the treasure is going to be in here. And they get in and they find their stuff. And little do they know, all of them are in a tiny box with a grate above, and she shows up. And she is impossible to kill at the moment where they are, the way that it is. And it was devastating. It was actually devastating. And I really intentionally wanted them to be in a place where they were brought to their highest point and used up their stuff and thought, you know, and then be knocked down a peg. And then of course I wanted them to be mad at her, because I wanted them to have that kind of motivation to really be smart when they went after her, because they know that she's stronger than them. The only way they're going to beat her is if they have a plan and information and a strategy. That's another thing I like to do. I like to hit people with stuff that they can't just fight. that if it's just you hit and I hit and you hit and I hit, they're never going to make it. They're going to lose HP far faster than the villain will, because I want them to think. I want them to have a plan. I want them to have an item. I want to have something that will creatively allow them to get the edge. That's more interesting to me, one, because of the stakes. So yeah, it ended up being a really kind of devastating and amazing moment in the show, and it happened to be the penultimate episode. And then they go in and they fight these baddies, and now they're motivated to do it.
Nice. And then hopefully, well, yeah, I mean, I know you're still probably writing the story that is going to be this one shot at D&D Live. But yeah, I'm excited to see where you want to place it. If it's going to be a prelude or a sequel or, a bridge to something else.
It's interesting. So we don't have a second season pickup for Relics and Rarities. I have no idea if we will, or if this will just be this special thing that we did once. But regardless, I have written a second season.
Oh my God.
You're like, I got one ready to go.
It's outlined. It's like, I know the structure of it. I know generally kind of what the main quest lines are going to be. So whatever I do run, this month, I would want to make sure that continuity wise, it'll work with what I have planned in case we get to do it. Although frankly, even if we don't get picked up, I'm going to run it at home with my friends anyways.
You're like, you guys get to get a sneak peek of R&R too.
So I have an idea. We'll see. I have to decide if I think it's exciting enough for a little quick one shot. And especially since some people who haven't seen the show, this might be their first exposure to it. So I want something that feels like they can engage, even if they don't know the surrounding story, and then go back and join us maybe.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It's hard. Yeah. Right. You want to give a taste of the gack without giving away all the gack. Yeah.
Full gack.
You want the full gack. You got to come back.
Oh man. That's why you're a brand manager.
Write that down.
That's marketing gold right there.
So when you're writing your stories, how much of it or your adventures, how much are you actually writing? It sounds like maybe a little more than an outline, but is it like a full on?
I always write an outline pretty much. I mean, I've written the structure of it because that's sort of important. And especially, again, this is where I think RPG entertainment is different than RPG at home.
Yeah.
If I were running a homebrew game, I would have a really rough outline of where this is going. And then I'd only really have specifics for what we're playing tonight. And then based on where they end and the things they were interested in, then I would flesh out where they're going. Because this is a show and I knew we kind of had to wrap up each place, it's a little bit more railroady. But because of that, what I wanted to make sure is that within, like, you're going to Bentham Manor, whether you want to or not, you're going to the manor, you're going to figure out what's happening. But while you're there are 10 different places you can explore. There are 10 different ways you can solve this problem. You can get clues to solve the problem. And so within the manor, there is complete freedom. And that's really what was important to me. If I'm gonna make you go places that I tell you to go, you can solve this quest and go anywhere you want. Bellbrook is a completely open arena. They can go wherever they want. I have a couple of places that are mapped out that are important to the story, but like they went to Tiefling Traders. Obviously, Kevin Smith made that up. That wasn't written.
So you got to go there.
You got to go.
Go there, and that's what happens. So yeah, they're rough outlines. I don't like to use a screen, so I just have a few notes really to remind me of a couple of key things. Other than that, I wrote it, so I kind of know it. Yeah, it's pretty rough.
That's interesting. It's very similar to my approach to dungeon mastering, where I'll like have like an idea, very little notes, and just kind of wing it. Of course, I'm usually going from published adventures that D&D has, and I've been working on those and feeling them out. And it's similar. I didn't write them, but I definitely have like a connection with them. So it never really feels like I need to have like even what's going to happen on each individual moment. And if someone's like, hey, we're going to go into the sewers, I'm like, all right, I'll come up with some encounters that you get into the sewers. And why are you going there again? Okay, you're just going to get some poop on your clothes. But I think what Shelley's really asking is how can she start dungeon mastering?
No, too scared. Although you are very inspiring.
Well, thank you. You should really do it. I don't know. I mean, that's all I can say, but I mean, you really should. It's so much more, It's easier than you think it would be because it's just you and it's just whatever you think is cool. I mean, all of the episodes are yeah, but all the episodes in R&R just came off of things that I like, you know, like I like The Exorcist, so Bentham Manor is a ghosty possession story, and I like Indiana Jones, so there's there's an Egyptian tomb, a Kektesh tomb, and so I don't know, I just pick things that I liked because I knew I would have lots to say and lots of things to put in there. And so it's really much easier because I think it would be much harder for me, at least, to write a campaign set in the Forbidden Realms where you have to know all of that history and that's really hard. And I really admire the DMs who aren't at Wizards of the Coast and who haven't written this all already, who learn all of that, who read the history books that come out and figure that all out. Because that's such a complex world to write in. If you're homebrewing it, you can make it up and then it gets to be real.
I think the key for me would definitely be new players.
Yeah.
Because they don't know. They don't know 100%. What I don't know. So
totally.
It's just the key is just to let them have fun.
You can make it like the Real Housewives of Bachelor. And just play that.
The Real Housewives of Bachelor Nation.
That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
The whole thing takes place in this mansion.
Yes.
There's going to be some tables. They might be flipped at some point.
For sure.
For harpies.
A house for harpies.
See, you got the enemies already.
And they all have like a common goal. The treasure is going to be some dude.
Can I please play this game?
Yes.
Can you write this and run this? And
I actually might. I might start taking some notes on this.
I was just thinking. I think I have an
Christina
outline
Ariel
in
has to
my.
help me, though,
yeah.
Because this would be right up her alley.
Let's do it.
We keep threatening to do a Real Housewives adventure.
Let's
it might have to happen.
All right. Well, that's it. We're doing it on the Twitch channel. You're all invited.
Okay.
Ryan and Pelham included. Well, I'm so excited for D&D Live. We're going to see you. Gosh, it's only 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
Write, like as soon as we get off now.
That's crazy. Yes.
I
might
too. A couple of puzzles,
but for
and then
different reasons.
Play testing because I always like to play test puzzles because you don't want people to feel dumb.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure they're like just hard enough, but not so hard, and Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was something we had to do for the Stream of Many Eyes, where it was like, all right, we want it to be hard, but we can't let it be easy
not
either.
Unsolvable.
Yeah, Alyssa Teague did a wonderful job writing those puzzles so that they happen right at the right time. But it's right, playtesting is key.
Yeah.
So for folks who are interested in finding about relics and rarities, where can they go to now to watch those episodes?
So if you're a subscriber to Geek and Sundry Twitch, the entire series is up there for VOD. You can watch from start to finish. And then on Geek and Sundry's channel on YouTube, we are through the end of the 5th episode. So 2 more weeks to release. Next week will be the first part of this last episode, and then 2 weeks will be the second part of the last episode. But yeah, everything is available there, as well as all these really cool little relic reflections where I talk to the guest actors about their experience playing D&D.
I love those.
That's
I love the idea of a talk back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. Well, even so, like we had Simone Missick come on for our big finale, who was on Luke Cage. And something, a really big thing happened right before her game, and she did her interview before her episode. So when first thing we sit down, I'm like, so how are you feeling? Now that you see that there are stakes and consequences, and here we go. And it was really interesting for her to be like, her first experience with it was this very dramatic moment.
That is super cool. Yeah. So where can people find out about you personally and what you're doing as well?
Oh, I'm on all the social media stuff myself, and then a webmaster is what we call them, who helps me run it because I'm not very good at social media. I've been pretty good about it with relics though, because I'm so excited about it. I'm like, oh great, yeah, I'll promote whatever you want me to do.
Yeah.
So they help me out. We do a lot of auctions for the Foundation Fighting Blindness and the Kororumi Research Foundation. Those are a cause that's very near and dear to me. So we do a lot of stuff. We sell Daredevil items and Punisher and True Blood, and some D&D stuff will be popping up soon too.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's your partner EJ, right? EJ Scott.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So that's fantastic, and I mean we didn't even get to talk about that, but there's a portion of what I've been trying to be excited about is making D&D more accessible to people who have vision impairments and hearing impaired and all that type of stuff.
What was incredible last year, I think Nathan showed me that there are Braille dice now, which is so exciting and great. And actually, EJ and I were talking, and I was thinking it would be really fun to try and run an adventure where all of the descriptions are extrasensory, so without using visual description. So when they walk into a stable, saying you smell the hay and the manure, and you hear the neigh and the rustle of a horse's tail, and like really leaning into those senses and creating the world out of that, rather than relying so much on saying, you enter a stable, there's hay on the floor, right, and the ceiling is 20 feet high. Instead of saying there's an echo in the space, you feel that it's large. Like trying to kind of give it a different flavor. So maybe I'll write something like that.
I played a character on a live stream here on this channel where the character was blind, and every once in a while I'd be like, oh, what do I see? And then everyone would be like, you don't see anything. I'm like, oh, great. No, I mean, what do I perceive? What happens? And it's so interesting to have to kind of, I mean, that's one of the wonderful things about D&D is you get to put yourself in shoes that you don't normally fill and experience that. And it was really enlightening. And we worked with a great visually impaired D&D player, Blind Temple, and found out all of those things. And he was wonderful. But it was a great experience, and I'm hoping to do that more going forward.
It's been impressive it's been impressive in the published materials as well. The more diversity and kind of, I've been enjoying that a lot more experiences are being included. It's a good time to be in role-playing games right now.
For sure. And we're glad that you're a big part of it.
And in 2 weeks, it's going to be an even better time to be in role-playing games.
It will
D&D
indeed.
Live.
Now I'm getting nervous.
Me too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm not.
A little bit. Well, thanks a lot for calling in, Deb. It's always wonderful to speak to you. You are inspiring, and it's wonderful, and I can't wait.
You guys as well, and thank you for having me on today, and thank you for being so welcoming in this community. I think, like I said, I was really nervous about exposing this side of myself, and it's been nothing but positive reinforcement and support. So thank you.
It's a good community.
Thank you.
For sure.
Well, thank you. That's it. We're done for our interview for today. And I think we're done for the live stream for today. We have to record some fun stuff for when we're going to be gone, because I don't think we're going to be broadcasting from this Friday time slot for the next 2 weeks, right? Because you're out the week after. No, wait. We will be doing
next
week. We have next week. We have Chris Funk next week that we'll be talking to him.
And then it's D&D Live.
So everybody should be watching that. and then
actually at this time that week will be Relics.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
2 p.m.
Exactly 2 weeks from
now.
Right now.
Wow.
So listen to us.
Yeah.
Don't listen to you.
Exactly.
We won't be here anyway.
Watch all the fun happen from Los Angeles. That's gonna be crazy. And then so we'll be out for the next couple of weeks, but I have to record the stuff that we're going to publish before that. But we won't burden you on the live stream with all that. But so thanks everybody for being in chat.
Yes,
you're amazing.
You.
Thanks to all of our subscribers, and we will be out of here. Any final words?
No, thank you so much.
Sketchy.
All right. See you in a few weeks.
Bye.
Bye.